If Kansas State or Iowa State are going to open up 2025 season with a statement, it starts in Dublin, of course, but it starts with the tight ends. That same tight end room better be locked in, synced up, and ready to rip the middle of the field wide open. Because if not, the trip to Ireland could get humbling real quick. Let's break down the tight end room and what might be the key to starting 1-0 and with an edge for a clear advantage in the Big 12 this season on this week's Farmageddon Friday.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, hit me with that beat. It's Farmageddon Friday here on this Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Iowa State. Always good to have you here. Christian Rao here with Nick Maravets. And this week we're diving into the tight end position. We've gone through the entire offense so far. Tight end is this week. We'll hit offensive line next week. And then July, we're going all defense. We're going to have you all the way every Friday up until week 0 here on Farmageddon Friday. So hope you enjoy this. If you do enjoy this, be sure to hit subscribe on whatever channel you're listening, whether that's Locked On Kansas State or Locked On Iowa State. Thank you for everydayers. Thank you for making this your first listen, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So check out FanDuel for more. Nick, this has been a fun I guess you could call it a series if you want to. It's just more been an adventure. And I think we're going to continue this through every off season. We'll probably take a break because we'll be big rivals in the actual season, right? But once we hit the off season, we'll probably come back and have these conversations. But we're in the thick of it. We're right in the middle of June. We're very close to week 0. We're talking less than 60. I think we're at 66 days. I think that's where we're at right now. If I remember correctly, it might be 65 whenever you're listening to this, but look, week 0, Dublin is going to be super exciting. There is no doubt about that. Kansas State, Iowa State starting the college football season off. And we've already talked quarterbacks, we talked running backs, wide receivers. And I've seen your comments. I know you've seen the comments on my shows as well when we go back and forth. The people want this, Nick. They want the conversation about the tight ends because Kansas State's got great tight ends, and so does Iowa State. Let's start with Iowa State, even though some of my comments are pretty pissed lately that we keep starting off with Iowa State in here. But don't worry, Kansas State's coming, but we're going to get this going here. That's unfortunately what happens when you win Farmageddon. You get to have segment 1 on these crossovers. So if you're a fan of Kansas State and you want segment 1, well, cheer hard in Dublin. Hey, look, let's talk Iowa State tight ends. When I look at these stats from last year, first thing that comes to my mind is you had 3rd and 4th receivers on your team were the tight ends when it comes to yardage. You had Burkle, you had Brahmer that were 3rd and 4th behind Noel and Higgins. So really, you're talking about other than those 2 big guys that we always constantly talk about in the wide receiver room, those were the dudes. Now, they didn't have a lot of scoring touchdowns, and that's something that I'm going to get to talk to about on my segment. But you get Berkeley, you got Brahmer, you have Colts, you have Moore. Does that room still look the same? What is the Iowa State room looking like in going into this new season? Is it the exact same room, or do you have some newcomers? What's the most exciting thing about this tight end room that should make you excited if you're a Cyclones fan or worried if you're a Wildcats fan heading into Dublin?
This tight end room is loaded. I'm not going to lie to you. Kansas State needs to be worried about the Iowa State tight ends. I mean, just to be completely frank, you talk about those guys from last year, Premer, Burkle really stepped up late in the season. Burkle, kind of the guy late in the season. Obviously, that Pop-Tart Bowl performance, second to none. But you ask what I am most excited about. Cooper Alexander, redshirt freshman last year, redshirt last year, redshirt freshman this year. I mean, this guy, it sounds like I've equated it to the way people talked about Mahomes before he was Mahomes, when he was behind Alex Smith. That's how it seems like people are talking about Cooper Alexander. This kid has it all. 6'4", 250. Are you kidding me? I mean, the kid's got it all as far as size, but talent, he's there as well. So Premer and Burkle, obviously, with the experience, but the newcomer in Alexander, I think, is really promising. And I think what you're looking at is the solution to the question of how does Iowa State respond to losing its top 2 wide receivers. You're obviously going to have Sowell and Townsend, right? Those are going to be guys that are going to step in, and they're going to try to fill that void. But the tight end position is it's like a gimme for Rocco. It's just kind of a dump, second resort. It's always there. The way that they are schemed into this offense is very beneficial for Rocco. And to have great pass catching tight ends, obviously they do great in the run game as well, but to have great pass catching tight ends, we're going to see, I think, a lot of production from tight ends this year and a lot of different sets and a lot of different ways to get them open, especially in the red zone. I think that's where this team can really utilize the tight end. Obviously, we'll see. Maybe we just throw it up to Sowell every time. I don't know. I don't know yet, but I do think the tight end is a very viable option.
We talked about the wide receivers last week, so we'll be one of the big transfers coming over from Iowa State. The week before that, we talked the running back game that you think is going to be taking a step forward because of the uncertainties, the possible uncertainties, I should say, in the wide receiver room. With that tight end room, where does that fit into that structure, that new structure this year? Do you think they take more of a target share because of the lack of maybe a true number one receiver, or maybe they take a step back because it's going to be so run heavy in 2025?
No, I think it's going to be actually a step forward just as far as receiving yards goes. I think they'll see some more utilization. I do think that they'll be utilized in the run game a lot. Like, I don't think there's any way around that. I think that's partially Iowa State football to an extent. Like, you don't want to get too far away from who you are. But at the same time, if you can utilize the tight ends to that kind of extent, let's do it. And I think that this unit of guys has the talent to do it. I think that Rocco... yeah, there's going to be plenty of options out there on the field. But when he's looking tight end's way, I think it's going to lead to a lot of scores.
Gotta love that. So number one tight end that you're really focused on this year is?
The one that I'm most excited for is Cooper Alexander, just to see what he can do. I don't know if he'll be the most productive tight end, to be completely honest, just because fresh into the system, if you will. Obviously, redshirt last year, familiar with the system, but not quite so much on the field. And so as far as production, I wonder if it is Burkle. I think Burkle might be that guy and Premer right behind him. Premer had that one-handed catch highlight in the spring training that I was super excited about. I was instantly up on my feet running around like, okay, we're good. We are totally set in the tight end department here. But I really want to see what Cooper Alexander does, because I wonder if he could be a problem not only for Iowa State in the next few years, but in the NFL. Like, just based on what I'm hearing, that's what it sounds like.
Let's put you on the spot real quick. You're obviously got to replace 167 receptions between Noel and Higgins. Obviously, even if there is not that as much production that you expect from the wide receiver room, you're going to get most of that from the wide receivers. That's just how the game plays. But Burkle last year led for tight ends, 26 receptions for 296 yards, had a touchdown as well. And then Brahmer only had 10 receptions, but it got 179 yards, averaged almost 18 yards per catch, and also had a touchdown. There's only 36 receptions there between your top two receivers. We're talking 167 receptions from your top two wide receivers from last year. If you had to put a number on it, right now we're talking about 40 receptions in 2024. How many receptions can you see your top two tight ends getting this season? Is double a fair number?
I was going to say somewhere between maybe 60 and 70, not quite to double, just because I'm curious. You know, we don't know for sure what the wide receivers are going to take as far as lion share. They might be as advertised and really dominate, and then there's not really a need to force it to the tight ends. I think if Iowa State needed to, they could. So I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a middle of the road approach there, but also that's kind of what you talk about with Premer. Like, they're a striking attack type of option for Iowa State. You don't have to throw it 60 yards downfield to Higgins. You can hit Premer over the middle for a nice 25-yard chunk. And that's kind of the duality of the tight end position. Do you go to them consistently and lean on the tight end and then use that in play action, and it's this whole web, or do you kind of shy away from them and catch the defense sleeping for that deep strike? Iowa State could go either way. I think that they have the offensive mind to do either one. I'm guessing they'll lean a little bit more on the tight ends, obviously, than last year, and put them at about that 70, maybe 65 mark.
We're going to talk about this in the future when we get the defensive side, but Kansas State has a lot of new faces in the linebacking core coming over from the transfer portal. They do have a guy named Austin Romaine, who is absolutely insane, arguably one of the top linebackers in college football. Obviously, when you think about the linebacking core, you think about how they protect against tight ends. That's kind of goes hand in hand when you think of apples versus oranges, red versus blue, and in this case, maybe red for Iowa State. Not sure. Do you guys still wear red? I'm not really sure how that works. And it's be red, maybe black against purple. I don't know. I heard that there was a quarterback that just got flipped to Alabama because he actually wanted to wear red. Is that true? Okay, sorry. That's as far as I'll go with the jokes on this one. We'll talk recruiting in a minute because I think Kansas State still has the upper hand on something else. But I digress. Linebacking. What do you think about the possibility of getting these tight ends against linebackers? You like their speed, you like their separation. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about this as far as a one-on-one matchup or whatever. I think you have to scheme to stop this tight end core. We got a ton of size. Premer at 6'7", Burkle at 6'6", and then Cooper Alexander, the smallest of the bunch at 6'4", literally the smallest tight end other than Keaton Roskop at 6'3". These guys are big dudes. I'm not too worried about the size battle. I think they've got the speed. We've seen breakout plays from these guys. I think you have to scheme for these tight ends. I don't think you could throw a linebacker one-on-one and call it a day.
I would like to congratulate you, and not because of this impressive tight end talk, but because we've made it an entire segment without making one reference to Frozen. Next, coming up right after this, let's talk about this side, Kansas State side of the tight end room, why I think they're going to be an absolute unit in 2025, not just Dublin, here on Farmageddon Friday between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones. But first, Nick, the NBA season, the MLB season is heating up. And with every game brings clutch hits, standout pitching, unforgettable moments from walk-off homers, no hitters in the making. There's no shortage of drama on the diamond and no better to get in on the action. I mean, I'm having a blast. I know I'm a Kansas City guy, Kansas City Royals right in the area. Jack Caglione just hit his first home run the other day. But man, watching Paul Skeens for the Pittsburgh Pirates is absolutely incredible. Tarek Skubal for the Tigers as well. That's a series that's going on a doubleheader that just happened yesterday. Those are what you want when you are sitting in on this amazing app with the most beautiful interface of FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before opening pitch. 2 live player props, performance trends, same game parlays. That's always fun as well. In a baseball game, fans have way more ways to play smart, and win big. So check it out. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Who's your team? Who's your baseball team? You got one?
Let's go Giants. San Francisco Giants.
Oh, Rafael Devers. That's a big one right now. Big trade that just happened over there. So check that out with FanDuel, the official betting sports partner of the MLB. Make every moment count with FanDuel.
I think Iowa State is going to absolutely crush the tight end game this year. I think I've made that pretty clear. There are 2 keys to Iowa State succeeding this season. It's the tight ends and the linebackers. And you're here with 2 powerhouse podcast crossover right now, Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones. Christian Rao, break down the tight end room in Kansas, I suppose in Manhattan for Kansas State for me, because I assume, and now maybe this is just me being a little silly goofy, there's no way it's better than Iowa State, right? I mean, everyone here that's listening just heard how good Iowa State was in that first segment. Can Kansas State top that, or is this going to be a little bit of a weak point for the Wildcats this season?
Well, Nick, first of all, I'm going to have to introduce you to something called Google. That's the first thing I have to introduce you to, because Kansas State is electric when it comes to tight end rooms. I mean, it might arguably be their best position group in the entire world, right? So hold on a minute, hold your horses. Okay, I understand the bias here, but okay, maybe be a little humble, maybe back up a little bit. Iowa State's defense has made a name of confusing quarterbacks, clogging lanes, taking away the run. I'll give you that. You want to beat that 3-3-5 defense, you better have guys that can expose the steams. Well, enter Linkon Cure, who's the top recruit, the top freshman, the top prospect in Kansas State football history. Enter Garrett Oakley, who was tied for first on the team in touchdowns last year, and maybe even add a little Ian Premer 1 year from now. We'll talk about that in the future, as he's most likely not going to be an Iowa State Cyclone, right? He's going to be a Kansas State Wildcat. But in week 0, that tight end room better be locked in, and that tight end room, I think, is going to be locked in. When you look at the players returning, there were, obviously, we talked last week, a subpar wide receiver room. That is not the case when it comes to the tight end room whatsoever. You have 4 returning tight ends that had solid production, and then you add Linkon Cure to the mix. There is 5 tight ends on this roster, and there might be more. We might have another breakout player in the spring, but there is at least, let me put this here, there is at least 5 tight ends on this roster that can make and will make an impact for Kansas State, and not just week 0, but the entire season of 2025. Garrett Oakley last year, 3rd on the team, 22 receptions for 236 yards, but he had 5 touchdowns. You have Lofton. Lofton had 2 touchdowns. Swanson had 3 touchdowns. We had more players as well. Who was the 4th one that we're looking at? Will Asio. He had also a couple touchdowns as well. 13 touchdowns out of the 25 went to tight ends. It was the most touchdowns in college football for tight ends. They led the country in red zone touchdowns. The tight end group did. So you're saying it's a subpar group? Hold on, Nick. Hold on. Maybe I wanted you to bring up some Frozen references so we could have a laugh. That is not the way to laugh here, sir. I'll have to teach you what Google is. GOGGLE.com. Okay? And that's not.
Are we sure about that? Are we sure that?
I just want to make sure. Hey, I just want to make sure you're paying attention.
Go swimming out here. Bringing Little Mermaid reference. Okay, so the Kansas State tight end room, it sounds like, for all the Iowa State fans out there, that I know we're still getting acquainted, right, with the Kansas State tight end room, because I had heard of them. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't even know. I didn't know Kansas State had tight ends. So it sounds like they're pretty good. Let's just go there, okay? You mentioned how good they are in the red zone, and I think that's a really good quality to have in a tight end room. The red zone is one of the hardest spots in the field to score from, other than, I guess, maybe you're inside your own 20, right? That's a long ways to go. But if you break one, it's kind of just a race. Once you get inside the 20 in that red zone, it's a chess match. It's the field is shrunk. There's no longer the deep threat. Those tight ends, if you can utilize them in the red zone, it's key to an offense. Now I ask you, because I'm just genuinely curious, do you think Kansas State will utilize the tight ends more in kind of the alumni section of that field, that deep strike area of the field, the midfield, if you will, or in the red zone? Do you think they'll kind of lean on the production they got last year and then kind of use other options to lead up to that?
I hope so. And I'm still laughing about me saying goggles instead of Google, by the way. So I'm not going to ever live that down. I'm a journalist.
That was not on purpose.
I can't even spell right. I'm having a great time with that one. I hope so, because look, the red zone, obviously scoring is important. I mean, the team with the most points at the end of the game wins. Not sure if you knew that or not, but I really do hope that they get more of utilization of the tight ends, outside of the red zone, because it's important, and because of how the rest of this team looks this year. We've gone about it in the past, talking about it in the past couple weeks. This running game is explosive. They're fast. They're not afraid to go outside the tackles. DJ Giddens, absolute workhorse last year. I think there's going to be multiple players that to replace him at that type of level, and I think they'll find a way to do it in the aggregate, but it'll be a different type of replacement. I think it'll be speed that they rely on. You have size with the wide receivers. You have a big guy in a short yard situation. All of those screen potential for stealing the spotlight from these tight ends in those red zone situations. So if you want to have that same type of production, and by the way, I just mentioned there's 5 tight ends that I think could have production. You also want to make sure they all eat, right? You want these really talented players all have the opportunity to eat, because if you don't, then there's this really unfortunate thing called the transfer portal that happens twice a year, and you don't want that to happen in the coming years moving forward, and you don't want it to hurt incoming recruits, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. So I really hope they find some ways to do that. I think they will. I'm really excited what Matt Wells is doing with this offense. I think he's going to have a really interesting way. I think that, put it this way, and this might be a bold take. Iowa State fans might not like this, but I obviously think Kansas State's going to win the game against Iowa State. I think that would just be a dumb thing for me not to believe that in the middle of June. I think Matt Wells is going to surprise so many people with the way that he has this offense humming against the Cyclones, 3-3-5 or not, with the play action from Avery Johnson, with a dual threat from Avery Johnson, the speed from Dylan Edwards and Jace Brown, and the electric play of possibly 5 different tight ends making the noise, that's all they're going to talk about on these big media networks heading into the first week of the college football season, because we're week 0, right? They're not going to talk about the other games. They're not going to be talking about Hawaii. They're going to be talking about Iowa State and Kansas State. They're going to be headlining the conversation on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, heading into the first week of college football. And I think the number one conversation it's going to be is how this Kansas State offense is absolutely humming. And that is going to be a big reason for these potentially 5 tight ends that could make a strong impact. I mean, Oakley, guaranteed to be an impact. He's going to be a stud. I think Swanson's going to make a bigger impact as well. We'll see if we get the others as well. And then Linkon Cure, we don't know what to expect from him right away. I thought there was a possibility that Linkon Cure might actually be seen as a wide receiver year one as a freshman because he stepped back. He didn't come for spring ball. He stayed back. He played with his high school to win a state championship for track. And I thought, hey, if you're running track, you're probably not going to be in the football weight for a tight end. Like, to me, that wasn't really putting together. But he put on a lot of good football weight. He wound up winning that state championship. And he's already making these coaches super impressed. And I think they can't wait to just put in a couple packages for him right away. I think we're going to see the freshmen shine. So I am really excited to see what this Kansas State tight end room. I'm probably more excited about this room than any other room we'll talk about during this series.
That's interesting. 5 is a lot. 5 is more than 4. 5 is more than 4. Wow. Goggle it. Okay. Just, you can find out for yourself that 5 is more than 4. It sounds like Kansas State may be going to be competitive in the tight end game, but can they step it up? Can they get even better? We'll talk about that coming up right here after this.
The top player in Kansas, 6'6", 230 pounds, a top 40 national recruit. And now Ian Premer is down to 5 schools. And Kansas State and Iowa State are right in the thick of it. Notre Dame is another one. So is Kansas and Michigan. Well, Notre Dame thinks they've also made a pretty move. Iowa State's getting a little too confident, in my opinion, but they feel like they might be the front runner. We're also hearing from some of the Notre Dame intels. I saw an On3 report came out on the Notre Dame side that they think Iowa State is the front runner. But let's just say Ian Premer, he's not just another recruit, okay? He's a Kansas State legacy kid. He's already tight with tight end Linkon Cure, that freshman phenom that we're talking about already in the last segment. And he's picturing himself in purple. I got to think he is. So with his final visit coming right here to Manhattan this weekend, I thought it was a perfect time. He's already gone everywhere else. He went to Iowa State last week, went to Notre Dame in the middle of the week, and he's ending his official visits right here in Manhattan this weekend. The battle might not be as open as people think. We'll see. But let's talk why Ian Premer's recruitment, in my opinion, is tilting to Kansas State. I'll see what you think. Why do you think Iowa State's the right fit for Premer, and what this could be for either one of our teams? Could this be the piece that turns a tight end room into the most dangerous in the country? Do you think that's the possibility for that? First of all, before I dig into it, there's this thought process that Iowa State has actually took a front run over teams like Michigan, who also signed a recruit. So we kind of think they're to the side. Kansas and Notre Dame. That's huge. Can't really put Kansas State in the mix right now because the official visit hasn't happened. But why do you think Iowa State is the front runner right now?
Well, it's clear that Iowa State is on the up and up. I mean, we've seen it.
Okay.
Really, for the biggest one, obviously, we didn't get to keep. Okay, we didn't get to keep Jet Tamala, but a 4-star recruit committing to Iowa State and then choosing Alabama. That's Alabama quality quarterback choosing Iowa State. Like Iowa State, I've talked about how we're making this step towards, once you get better, it's exponential. We're on that swing upwards now, where real legitimate recruits are genuinely, seriously considering Iowa State. I know it's not necessarily like super like normal. People are probably still like, that can't happen. That's, what are we even talking about? But that's where Iowa State is right now and where they will be. I think the Iowa State, as far as tight ends goes, if you want to get specifically into that position group, is a great spot to come and develop as a player. And then when you make that comment, obviously you have to talk about just how important development is to Iowa State. You talk about Matt Campbell, first thing that you think of is developmental program. That's literally the first thing. So when players want to make it to the next level, which, believe it or not, a lot of high school players want to make it obviously to college, but then to the NFL, Iowa State is a great spot to do that. You come here, you get better, you perfect your craft, and you win while you're doing it.
saying the program's on an up and up, that sounds like momentum. And momentum in recruiting is absolutely real, Nick. I will not disagree with you whatsoever on that. But so is timing. Timing is absolutely real. And you've had your shot. Kansas State's got the closer role now. I mean, we're talking baseball. Our friends at FanDuel, we talked to the MLB seasons right here. The closer role right here. Mariano Rivera, call us the Kansas State Wildcats, the best closer in the business, because we've got the relationship that was built before this hype has kicked in with either Notre Dame or Iowa State. So that's where my thought process is. I think the connection with Linkon Cure, I think that Cure Premer pairing of a future tight end U, if you will. I think Kansas State's already tight end U, although you've never goggled it once. But the talk, I'm so excited for it. And here's my question. Okay. And I think this is a fair question. Maybe it's not fair in your mindset, but Notre Dame's own insider on On3, they stated about how they think Iowa State's the real threat. Okay. I don't know if that's true. And I mean this actually very respectfully. But let's be real. Is Iowa State featuring tight ends the same way that Kansas State can and has? I'm just talking about the fact that there was 5 tight ends that could potentially be in the mix this season alone. Iowa State can't do that.
Can he compete with 5? That's a big number. That's something you got to consider. Can you come in and be the guy in a room that's got 5 dudes? That's at least worth talking about.
Is it though? Because this guy seems like a competitor. And he seems like he wants to be. I'm sure. Yeah, he seems like he wants to be around talent, right? That's why he's got that connection with Linkon Cure. I don't know. I to me, I think that's really important. And I'm surprised when I read that thing from, I think his name is Mike Singer from On3. Want to make sure give him credit. Notre Dame insider on On3. How he was saying that he had a great visit to South Bend, but he thought that Iowa State had the lead. I was actually surprised thinking that Notre Dame was going to be the team, because let's be honest, when you're thinking about recruiting and you're talking about big programs, you're not normally thinking about Kansas State and Iowa State. You're thinking those Ohio States, those Notre Dames, those Alabamas. That's just kind of the way that this world sees it. You go to every other major national sports website, and they're usually only talking about them. You got to go through the weeds to find Kansas State and Iowa State. That's just the unfortunate truth. But this is an in-state guy. This is a Kansas kid. And hey, look, I think it's going to come down to the two of us. That's why I wanted to have this conversation. I don't think it's going to wind up being Notre Dame. I think when he has his decision, I think he's going to put all 5 hats on the table, because he did have his 5 final schools, the ones that make the official visit. He seems like just that kind of guy that is going to be respectful to the process. But I think deep down inside, it's going to come down to the Cyclones, and it's going to come down to the Wildcats. And I think Kansas State's going to come on top. I think we're going to see him in Manhattan. You have any rebuttal for that?
Well, I think you're right when you say that when people think about Iowa State in these recruiting competitions, it doesn't generally go, oh yeah, Iowa State's probably going to win that. That's just the reality of the situation. I'm not even joking. That's genuinely not something that people think. But I do think that that's changing. I think that we are seeing that kind of in front of our eyes slowly. Iowa State is becoming more of a threat in all of these conversations. And to talk about, obviously, how will he be utilized, this, that, and the other? Iowa State has NFL tight end talent. We have guys going to the NFL, or in the NFL now, and going to the NFL. Kohler, Klotz, dudes. Obviously, I think Burkle could be an NFL caliber tight end. Bramer, you name it. Iowa State has shown they can develop guys into NFL talent. I think really what it comes down to for me is the culture, and it's such a word that gets thrown around, but it's real, and it's something that recruits have talked about, guys that have transferred to Iowa State. That was one of the main reasons. You're not just a number at Iowa State. You're really a part of the program, and everyone cares about your development. Like I said, developmental program. So I will be curious to see, will it be Kansas State, or will he pick up that hat, put it back down, and put on the Cardinal and gold? I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I think it's a good sign for Cyclone fans that we're legitimately in this. I think this is a sign, even if you don't land the recruit, right? Even if it's just not your day, still, you were legitimately in this conversation, which I know you didn't win it, and I get that. But would we have been in this conversation 10 years ago? And I think this is a sign of where Iowa State's at and where they will be.
I'll give you one caveat here. I think even if you don't win these recruiting battles, finishing second in some of these might actually be something to keep in mind for the future in this new transfer portal world. If they don't like where they're at in that first time around, they hit the portal. Well, guess who was number 2? And guess who's probably going to be on the phone right away if that happens? Not saying this happens with Ian Premer, but just something to think about just for all recruits in the future. June 20th to 22nd is his final visit to Kansas State, right before July 4th. I'm guessing that's when he's probably going to make his decision. And that's when fireworks usually go off, right?
I think so. Pretty sure.
Yeah. We'll have to goggle that, make sure it's the case. Thanks for listening here to this Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones. Be sure to hit subscribe, leave your comment. If you can't find us, just goggle us. We'll see you back here for another episode. Yeah. That's Spidey glasses? Should I have Spidey glasses or just Google?
Are those telescopes or are they goggles?
Telescopes. I like that.